I think ultimately, for me, that just, like, that reveal spoke to how, like, how different
Hmm.
Tolkien's writing like, the purpose of Tolkien's writing was from the purpose of Rings of Power, because Rings of Power is, like, structured very much like a, like a modern, like,
Streamer,
fantasy
yeah.
show.
Mega Van and Popverse. This is Ashley Victoria Robinson, your video host and producer here in the Popverse, a virtual realm created by ReadPop. We are celebrating the best in TV, movies, and comics each and every single day. And you know what hits every single one of those Venn diagram circles? The world of Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings. Next week, friends. Next week, The Rings of Power Season 2 joins us on Amazon Prime after a 2+ year wait. We are finally getting back into the adventures of Galadriel, Elrond, Princess Disa, Erendir, and these amazing characters during the Second Age of Middle Earth. Now, a huge part of the Rings of Power fandom and a huge part of fandom culture in general is participatory culture. Participatory culture is things like fan art, fan fiction, when you jump onto Reddit and you chat with your friends about your theories and the things that you love, when you read an article on Popverse, when we make videos like this, it is how we participate with the things that mean the most to us. One of the cornerstones of participatory culture in the Rings of Power is, of course, the Haladriel, Saladriel, Galadriel slash Sauron relationship. We have talked about it here in the Popverse before. It is the cornerstone of the narrative that seems to be driving this version of Tolkien's unfinished tales forward. So, I want to examine a little bit about what that relationship looks like. It obviously is seated in the show from the pilot episode. It's confirmed by the season 1 finale episode. Seems like the door is wide open from interviews that we've seen, from context clues that we've got from the creators for season 2. But a huge part of what raised the profile of this dynamic came from fan cultures. BNFs like Tea with Tolkien and Fellowship of Fans really took this idea and ran with it early on in the series, and it's only grown in the years since we first were sort of introduced to this as a potential idea. So, in order to break it down, I am joined by fellow Tolkien expert and Potverse staff writer Grant DeArmond. So let's put our hands together in the traditional Potverse Theater Kid round of applause and welcome Grant to chat some shipping with us today. Grant, thank you for joining me to talk Rings of Power today.
Thanks for having me. Always excited to talk Rings of Power with you.
We're here very, very seriously to talk about Rings of Power, and we're here specifically to talk about, the very non-controversial topic of Haladriel or Saladriel,
Mhm.
which the shipper name that delights me to no end because it has the word salad in it, the relationship between Sauron and Galadriel. So, season 2 is when this video comes out starting. We know that
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 is.
relationship is going to be centered even more than in season 1. So I would love to know, in your opinion, the Sauron and Galadriel relationship, romantic or not, as we currently understand it, how do you think
Uh-huh.
it stands up, and how do you sort of understand it in the function of the show?
I think that so Galadriel is in the first season
Hmm.
dealing with like so much. I mean, what boils down to trust stuff, right? Like she's lost
Yeah.
and she's lost and she's lost. And so I think like it makes so much sense that the writers would want to challenge that, right? Like
Hmm.
to get her to a place where she's like basically trusting somebody. Um and then just cruelly rip it away. Um so I think upon initially seeing their kind of I do think it's romantic. I think
Hmm.
there's like a romance there. I think that that was my first thought is just like, well, like of course, because she needs she's been reaching out for someone so long, um, just to kind of feel some companionship with. So that it makes total sense that the most devastating thing for her would be that person being her ultimate enemy, that the person that brought about so much suffering for her. Um, so I just saw it as like really something for her character, much more than I did for for Sauron's character. Like I thought it was way more about her. You know what I mean?
So quick sidebar, were you tricked by the Halbrand of it all in season one? Because around these parts, he was known as Discount Aragorn for a long time, and then he became known as young, sexy Sauron. So the reveal for me personally wasn't a huge surprise. Just like as a sidebar, I didn't tell Grant we were going to talk about this. What did you think ultimately about like the Halbrand is Sauron reveal?
I think first of all, I think it was spoiled for me before I saw it in the episode.
That scans,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I don't even remember how. Probably,
Probably a
probably
tweet.
on the front page of a major news source.
Naming no varieties. Yeah.
Screaming, we don't have a deadline for anything that
No,
we're talking about.
absolutely not. No Hollywood reporters around here.
No. Um, but yeah, what I thought of it was, hmm, I don't know. I honestly, it just it didn't shock me,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
nor did it nor was I like mad about it.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like, oh, really, uh they really screwed over the season by doing this, nor was I like, wow, this really makes the whole thing come together. Um,
It reminds me of at the end of season one of Star Trek Discovery when they were really they announced that Ash Tyler was actually Vok. And I was like, well, when you announced that Shazad Latif was joining the cast, you announced he was playing a Klingon general. So like we've been knowing that this was
yeah,
good. So
sure.
it kind of reminded me of that in a similar way where it was like it was laid out so well that by the time it happened, you were like, yes, I understand
Yeah.
this.
I think ultimately for me that just like that reveal spoke to how different
Hmm.
Tolkien's writing, like the purpose of Tolkien's writing was from the purpose of Rings of Power, because Rings of Power is like structured very much like a modern like
Streamer,
fantasy
yeah.
show. So like
Yeah.
big reveal at the end makes all the sense in the world, but Tolkien didn't care about reveals. I mean, Tolkien tells you what's going to happen in the story, like Children of Hurin. I think
Yeah.
one of the first lines is like, and then this is Turambar who died, who died killing the dragon. So it's like, I don't think he cared too much about like twists and reveals or anything like that.
Okay, hold, because my cat is screaming outside the door, so I'm gonna go let him in. And then
Okay, I cannot hear
great, because I can.
that. Are you sure it's not a ghost cat?
Such an idiot. I love him so much. Okay, I'm so glad you brought up Tolkien because I would love to know because I mean, you gave yourself away with the Children of Hurin reference, but Grant is like our other sort of deep cut Tolkien nerd around these here parts of the
Hmm.
Popverse. So I would love to know, what's your take on like Galadriel and Sauron's relationship with the book? Because I did a video previously where I talked about in the Unfinished Tales the reference to their rivalry almost, and Sauron has this deep-seated fear of Galadriel that we don't see as much in the Lord of the Rings films. So give me your like textual take on the two of them.
Well, she is I mean, like, as I understand it, she is like an example of how power doesn't have to corrupt everybody,
Well
in Lord of the Rings.
said. Well said,
Um,
Grant.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
I really love
Uh,
that.
I mean, um, like I remember, seeing the movies as a kid, and that big moment where Kate Blanchett, who I immediately fell in love with, is
Grant, she
all.
was like our age, which makes me feel ancient.
Oh boy, ouch. Oh boy. Well, we can end the call here, I guess.
Yeah,
I have
yeah, yeah.
a nap to
And
take.
call.
Yeah. Um, but no, I that's so memorable as like
Mm,
this like big spooky scene. Her in the sort of ring like makeup, but you realize that that is like such a defining moment for her character once you read the books and
mm,
understand that like she had every opportunity to literally become a being as powerful, if not probably more powerful, right, than Sauron in that moment. And she said no. Not only no, but she said no and like agreed to fade away. That is so like
yeah.
that is so heartbreaking. You know what I mean? Because you like you would just understand that someone of her talents and brilliance would want to keep that talent and brilliance in Middle Earth for to do some real good. But then she says no anyway, and oh man, I love that moment.
It's
Um,
it's kind of like if Uther Pendragon had the opportunity to pull
ooh,
Excalibur, and then he was like, "Nah, Arthur's got this."
yeah, yep. Oh, that's a really good, yeah, that's a really great analogy.
Thank you. That's for my BBC Merlin
So
fans out there, not for the
nice.
actual mythology. For the Anthony Head
Um,
lovers.
there you go. Of which there are many, I am
As there should
sure.
be. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, I love them as foils because I
Hmm.
think they're both and they're both well written characters, but so they're not just like messages Tolkien was trying to convey, but also in their characters, the message of like power corrupting is so well conveyed.
I'd also love to know what's your take on the fandom sort of reaction to Haladriel, the big ship, because Rings of Power has like a super, super vocal fan base, and they're really like they are kind of nerds. They're like textual based book nerds. Actually, it's pronounced Fëanor, not Feanor. You'll never convince me on that. It's pronounced Feanor. Sorry, I'm gonna die saying Feanor. You can die angry about that. That's all okay. Um, and they've really taken up this ship in a big way, and there were people shipping them before we officially knew that Halbrand was Sauron. So, are you shocked that the fandom has picked it up in this way, or are you like pleasantly surprised? Tell me your takes.
Well, first of all, I don't know that I'm ever like, and this is not a diss. I don't know that I'm ever super shocked when two objectively hot people are shipped on a TV show.
I'm
Like
screaming. That's, I mean, fair.
we uh,
Yeah.
we want hot people to be with hot people. There's nothing wrong with that. So in that sense, no, I'm not shocked. I think that um I guess leading up to,
Mhm.
like, the more romantic moments in the season, I would not have suspected, I don't
Mm.
think, that they were going to be, like, as as intimate and romantic as they to get to that, like,
Yeah.
romantic point that they were at by the end of the season. So it does surprise me to learn that there was a very vocal group shipping them with evidence. Does that make sense? Like,
Yes, yes.
as opposed to just the base nature of like, "Look, we want those people to get together." Um,
Specifically. That, yeah, all the Shiro shippers are like, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about."
so yeah, that does surprise me a little bit. Definitely that the fan reaction or the fan shipping would start so early, and I would be very curious as to, like, what their evidence was for the ship, like, very early on.
Oh, it's
Other
basically the boat scene, like, let's be honest.
Okay, yeah, sure, yeah.
Okay, I wanna ask you a question. It's kind of spoiler filled, so I wanna give everyone the chance. If you don't want any potential, this is a potential spoiler. Granted, I have not seen Wings of Power. You can skip ahead like a minute and a half, and you'll be okay. So we're gonna ask Grant a spoiler question in three, two, one. Grant, there's a persistent rumor that in this universe, Sauron is Celeborn. We know Celeborn winds up marrying
Yeah.
Galadriel. They father Celebrian, who marries Elrond and becomes Arwen's mother. Thoughts? Because my thoughts are legion, and if it turns out to be true, personally, this is something I want to try and meet where it is, but I'm like, this is a wild swing if
Yeah,
true.
yeah, definitely. I okay, it's definitely a wild swing, so
Yeah.
wild that I'm almost like, would the showrunners,
Would they
for lack of
dare?
a better term, would they do it and then maybe, like, Palpatine it? You know what I
Yeah, yeah,
mean?
yeah, 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 yeah. I
"Oh,
feel like
actually, turns out," you know what I mean?
it was
Like
his twin brother who was Celeborn.
yeah. Or would is there a potential to get the absolutely hysterical Aragorn, Sauron as in-laws sitcom? Like, is that I mean, is
Oh
that what
boy, I
it's
hadn't even
ultimately
considered
setting
that.
up? is that what it's ultimately setting up is like Modern Family, but Phil is Aragorn and Jay is Sauron.
Oh my God. Because
Uh,
my other thought was maybe because the twins aren't as prominent in the larger sort of pop culture sphere knowledge of the Tolkien canon. Like maybe, and I believe they're supposed to be older, so maybe they're going to say that Eladon and Elwir here are, and then maybe Arwen is going to, because another sort of part of that persistent rumor is that we will see a child come out in future seasons. So
okay.
interesting,
Yeah.
lots to think about. Grant, before I let you go, will you tell everybody where they can find you on the Popverse, where they can find you online, where they can come and tell you that your opinions were fascinating and right, and they absolutely hold a deep respect for you for daring to put your opinions out on the internet today?
To my house, knock on my door, and tell me that I'm right about most to all things. No, I'm on Instagram at GRANT_DEARM, as in Michael, ITT. And I mean, where I am most of the day is Popverse. So if you're paying attention to the front page of Popverse, which why wouldn't you at this point? Because we have so much Rings of Power stuff coming down the
Oh my
line.
gosh, so much.
Um, and I mean, we got everything coming down the line. Um, that's I mean, that's where I want people to find me right now, because I want people to read all these things that we're putting together about Rings of Power and everything else.
Amazing. Grant, I banish you back to your
To
house
the doors of
on
night.
the hill. Exactly that. I'm sure we'll be back talking more Tolkien very, very soon.
Can't wait. Looking forward to it.
Did you ever think we would get this deep on a ship in the Potverse? Did you ever think that we would finally get season 2 of the Rings of Power? I had so much fun chatting with Grant about this. By the way, if you want more Rings of Power, Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth, Tolkien, shipping, anything like that, be sure that you are checking out thepopverse.com, where we have a bunch of stuff that can tide you over from both me, Grant, and the rest of our incredible team all the time. Check that out. While you're here, by the way, if you've enjoyed this video, if you've enjoyed some of our Rings of Power coverage leading up to the first episode of season 2, why not subscribe to this channel? Click that little bell. You'll get a notification. You'll always know when we are putting out more content. You can engage in fan participatory culture of Popverse, and we can build a bigger, brighter future in the third age of Popverse together. I've run this metaphor into the ground. I have been Ashley Victoria Robinson, your video host and producer here in the Popverse, a virtual realm created by ReadPop, where we are celebrating the very best in TV, movies, and comics each and every single ding dang day. Thank you for so much for joining me here at the White Tower of Ecthelion, and I will see you next time.